Okay, I am going to go through beginning exercises in 3D space. And this is going to be part of the assignment where you'll create a 3D cube and learning how to manipulate things in 3D space. Also learning how to use some virtual lights and virtual cameras, how to create shadows, and different ways of creating effects using lights and shadows. So I'm going to start off by bringing in this object that we have from the Myers Media, and it is just called AB Exteriors. Okay, and let's go ahead and just make it a little bit smaller. I'll make the whole frame bigger here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a 3D layer. And as soon as I do that, you'll see that we've got these X, Y, and Z coordinates built into it. That is Y, X, and this little blue thing here is Z. And it's just like these other ones, it just is facing towards the camera. And as soon as I make it 3D, you'll see that in the transformations, we also have these additional ones here that say X, Y, and Z rotation. Okay, and once we have created this first layer, I'm going to just duplicate this 3 more times. Okay, and now I'm going to rename these things. So this top layer, let's go ahead and rename it wall or back wall. This next one, let's rename it right wall. And then we have the left wall. And this last one is going to be the floor. Now I'm seeing a lot of students who are not renaming these layers, and it's just making things more difficult on you when you're trying to work and you don't know what layers are what. So I would recommend just spending those extra 10 seconds and naming your layers, especially when you have multiple layers. You're going to find that you're not going to know what you're looking at, and then that's going to just make things messy, and you won't know where, if you have a problem, it's going to be very hard to identify where that problem is. All right, so you need to view this in the 4 views, and once you have identified them as 3D layers, you're going to see what they are over here. This is top, active camera, right, and front. Okay, so what I want to do first is take a look at where this thing lives. Even though there's 4 objects in here, since they have no width, looking at it from the top, you'll see that there are other ones here. Just can't see them because they are all in the same exact space. Okay, and so what I want to do first, I'm going to actually hide the other ones for now. And let's put this wall in the back. And maybe let's hit S for scale, and let's make it a little bigger, maybe like 45% about. All right, now let's work on the right wall. And what I want to do is I select that one. I'm going to twirl this down and go down to where it says Y rotation, and I'm going to twirl that to the side. And let's go ahead and put this over here and pull it down. And so if you're looking at it just from the top, it looks fine. But if you look at it from the active camera, you're going to see that it is not fine. So we have to figure out why that is looking that way. In order to do that, we're going to create a new camera. And I'm just going to make it a 24mm lens for now. And so now when I have an active camera available, I can come up here and select the Orbit camera tool. And that allows me to see what's going on from different angles. So I can look over here and see that this thing is not connected really well. All right, so in order to fix that, I can now come over to this thing here and let's twirl it down. I might need to change the scale of it a little bit. And let's go ahead and move it around. Go back to my arrow key, which is A for if you're looking for the shortcut. All right, so I can also just move it around this way. So any one of these windows allows you to move these things if it's selected. Okay, and so again, I'm going to go to my camera orbit tool just to see how things are looking. And I can see that there's a little, it's off a little bit here, but that is probably okay for this exercise. And go back to the unified camera tool. And okay, so now I'm going to do my left wall. Make it visible. Transform, change the Y rotation. And this one is going to go the opposite way. Hit A to go back to my arrow tool. And let's match the size of this thing. So the right wall has 46 was the scale size. So I'm going to go over to the left wall and hit S for scale. And let's just make that 46 as well so I know it's the same exact size. And I'm going to now try to make it match and sit there. And we go to our tool to look at the camera. And let's see how that's going. That looks pretty good. All right, now I'm going to go to my floor. In this situation, I'm going to twirl the X rotation since it's the bottom of it. And if I'm looking at it from the right, you can see that this thing is living right in the middle of the box. So I'm going to just kind of pull it down a little bit. And I want it to sit right there. And I can see that, if looking at it from the top, that it is not up against the back. I might scale this up to just a little bit to kind of fill it out. All right, that's getting pretty close there, and I can pull that down a little bit. Oh, wrong one. Selecting the right one is important. Okay, and let's go to our unified camera tool, or orbit camera tool, and look at that. That looks pretty good. All right. So the next thing that we need to do is take a look at the layer new light. Okay, when I create a new light, let's just call this Spotlight 1 and say OK. And here's what this spotlight looks like. And as soon as I turn it on and off, you can see we get a pretty dramatic change in the lighting. So like this could apply to any type of object as long as you identify it as 3D. If it's a 2D object, in other words, you did not click on the box, these lights will have no effect on it whatsoever. Okay, so I'm looking at it from the right here, and I think I want to have like a shot from having the light from up above. Okay, and that looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some more objects to my shots here. So let's take this goldfish and put it in here. And notice that since it is not a 3D object, it does not have any impact from the light. But as soon as I turn the light on and off, not only do I get my vertices that I can pull on, but the light is impacting it in a certain way. Okay, and so that's good. Now, I want to create shadows for here. So this is this fish here, this one right here. So I'm going to pull it forward, and notice as I pull it forward, if I go behind this back wall, it disappears. If I go a lot forward, it comes closer to the camera. And I want to twirl down this fish. When you apply the 3D cube, the material options become available. And I want it to cast shadows. So here it says cast shadows, and I say on. And look at that, it created a shadow for me. Okay, if I double click the light, I get these options back so I can change the darkness of the shadow. I can change the diffusion of the shadow. And as I move this light around, you will see that that shadow, whoop, wrong thing. Click on the fish. So as I move this around, the shadow follows it. If I select the light and move the light around, notice the shadow moves around. I'm going to fix that shadow. I don't like the way that looks, so I'm going to say, oh, the other thing, make sure that you have cast shadows turned on in the light settings. If you do not, you will not get any shadow, okay? So why would you want to do that? Well, maybe you just want to use the lighting effect to create an interesting look, because I could do the following. Maybe I don't want to color correct something, and I turn off cast shadows, and I want to give it like a little red hue. I can use this to create a little kind of a mood change to the piece. Okay, so I can add different color lighting. Okay, maybe I'll make it a little bit red. Okay, and turn shadows back on. And I'm going to diffuse that shadow and say OK. Now I'm going to animate this light. Okay, I want this light to, so in order to animate the light, we are going to go down to the spotlight, transform, and I'm going to turn on the point of interest and position tools. And maybe when it starts, I wanted it to be down low and pointed up a little bit. Okay, and so now when it you can see what's happening with the light. I think that shadow is too dark. So let's double click that light for a second and make the shadow darkness a lot less. That's looking like what I had in mind. Okay, so now the shadow is moving up and down accordingly. But in addition to it going up and down, I actually want it to go left and right. So now I'm looking at it from the top and make sure I'm sitting on those keyframes for this light. Let's go ahead and move it to the left and also point it towards my scene. And then we will move it this way. I'm holding in the shift button to have it snap to these other keyframes. And so now I want it to go this way and also go back over here. Now if I click on this little path, you'll see that you can actually create some nice motion here, so it's not so staggering. So notice what the light is doing, it's arcing around. All right, so let's go ahead and make that an endpoint for the work area, and let's see what it looks like. So that's looking pretty good. All right, and so now what I want to do is add this this butterfly into the scene. Make sure you make it 3D. It's on a strange location here, so I'm looking at it from the top. Maybe I want this butterfly. Whoop, I'm moving the wrong thing again. Make sure you're selecting the right thing. And I want this butterfly to move back a little bit. You can see that the bottom is getting cut off because it is sitting in a place that is below the floor. And so that's what's going on there. And let's go ahead and change the scale of this too. I'm going to scale it down a little bit. I'm going to twirl it down to get to the material options. Make sure that cast shadows are on. And now I have these shadows as they move around. And that looks pretty good. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is animate the camera. And this gets a little bit confusing for people that first start out, and that's okay. But let's say I'm looking at the top view first. And let's say I want this camera at the very beginning to be, let's find a good place. Where do we want it to start from? Maybe it's going to be in close, or actually maybe it's looking at it like this. And let's twirl down the camera and transform the point of interest. I'm going to turn all these things on because I'm not sure which ones I'm going to use. And I'll move it in time. And now let's bring our camera to a new location. Okay, I'm going to move it around kind of randomly at this point just to kind of see how it looks. And you'll see here I'm looking at it now from the right, and I can see that it's aiming too low. All right, let's go a little bit further. And I'm going to arc this camera. So what's going to happen to this camera over time, and I'm looking over to this window here to watch the motion of the camera from above. And I don't like where it ends, so let's go ahead and change that end point to be over here. And let's review that again. All right, that's looking a little better. And in addition to that, when it starts, I want this camera over time, I want its position to alter. So maybe it's at the beginning, maybe it started low actually. Let's say it started down here and it was looking up. And then as it travels, the camera is going to head up and tilt down as it goes. And so here's what our camera move is looking like. Let's do a preview. Look at that. That's pretty cool. And I can slow it down a little bit and right click these guys, these keyframes, and say Easy Ease. And on top of it, as this camera moves, you can see that these things are paper thin. So I'm going to do auto orient. If you remember that from an earlier lesson, select these two layers, go to Layer, Transform, Auto Orient, Orient towards Camera, and say OK. And so now these objects, this fish and the butterfly, no matter where the camera goes, it's always going to be 90 degrees to that camera. Okay. One last thing I want to show you is how to create a gobo. A gobo is an object that goes in front of a light that will give you the illusion of something like cityscapes or Venetian blinds or something that you're using to create the illusion that the light is casting a shadow. But it doesn't actually have to be a shadow. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this light for a moment and create a new light. Let me change this thing around a little bit so that I'm looking at my objects in a certain way. Let's see how this is going here. Okay, that's good. I create a new light. And let's make it completely white for this example. Say OK. And now what I want to do is I want to put something in front of this light. Okay, so if I take another object, let's go ahead and pull up a video, for example. Maybe fire, or let's see, how about something kind of trippy like this thing here. Okay, and I'm going to take this thing and I'm going to put it in my layer. I'm going to call it 3D. And by default, it's going to go right there. But what I want to do is I want to see where I'm going to select the camera and shift select the object, the light. And so now I can kind of see where the light is. And I want this thing to be right up against this light. Okay? And when I select the material options for this, I'm going to twirl it down and I'm going to say not cast shadows, not on shadows, it's going to be only. What this does, I need to move this around to kind of get a better look at where these things are. What I want this thing to be is right in front of the light. And let's go ahead and double check that this is transforming this. Oh, what we want to do is it's going to, you want to say only, so you don't see the object, but I want to say where it says light transmission. I want to bring that up. And so what that does is it takes the video that I selected and it's going to play this video through that light. So no matter where it goes, you see that this thing is following along with this light. So that's an interesting way to create another lighting effect by using this light transmission at 100%, casting shadows only eliminates the object, but you see either the shadow or the transmission of this particular object, which is this video that I had used. All right, so let's see how this thing looks. And I'm going to try to put in a different video just to kind of give you some options. So I'm going to browse and bridge and pick a different thing that is clearly something different. Let's go ahead and pick this thing here. And I'm going to select this movie, which I'm using as my gobo, and take this Gears and Movie, hold in the Option key, and replace that. So now this Gears and Movies is what's creating that look. And if I move this thing a little bit further away, and let's go ahead and look at the light that it's shining through, and I'm going to take away the diffusion. And so now you can kind of see it a little clearer, but you're seeing some interesting things going on there. Now if I turn on the other light that I had on before, so now we have a lot of different things going on. So we can see the shadow and the light transmission, gobo, and the shadows. We can also see the gear going on, which gives you some really interesting opportunities to do some nice work.